How you can get in contact with our office. So we offer a few different ways. So we do have virtual career services available to all students at UH. And we also have sessions, which could be appointments or drop-ins. So you'll see the first session is 30-minute counseling appointments, and you can go through Cougar Pathway to schedule that appointment. So the same system you use to RSVP for today's workshop will be the same system you go in to make those appointments. If you can't really do appointments because you have a really crazy schedule or you just need quick help or questions, we do have drop-ins. And our spring drop-in hours are Mondays and Tuesdays from 1 to 3, while Mondays are virtual only and Tuesdays are in person at our office only. This information also can be found on our website, uh.edu/UCS, and you'll see the student tab and meet with the counselor. And then we also have our Wednesday workshops. So if you're familiar with Cougar Pathway and looking at the events and workshops that are coming up, you'll notice that most of them take place on a Wednesday and they are virtual, pretty much in this same format that we're in today. And if you wanted to make sure that you get the access link the day of, just RSVP. Even if you may not be able to show up that day, that's okay. But if you wanted to stay in the loop and have access to it, just RSVP, and we do send the link out around 9 a.m. each Wednesday morning for that workshop. Now, Cougar Pathway, again, is where you can schedule appointments. You can also search and apply for jobs. So if you have not accessed that feature yet in Cougar Pathway, I highly recommend that you do. Even if you're not looking for a job yet or internship, you can still just browse to see what's out there to make sure that you are working on the correct track to obtaining a dream job or a goal, right? And then you can also upload and have your resume reviewed actually through VMOC. So VMOC is our system in which we may put the link in the chat later toward the end, but VMOC you can use to get line by line immediate feedback on your resume. As far as having your resume and CV reviewed, you can do that through a session with a counselor. So for example, you got on schedule an appointment with a career counselor, and you can choose whether you're talking about your resume, CV, or cover letter, okay? And we can do that virtually, so it doesn't have to be in person. You can also schedule on-campus interviews. So employers like to have different interviews at our office, and you may be able to schedule that interview with them, or you may be able to meet in our office to conduct a virtual interview that you might have. So you'll just have to connect with our office to understand the process, availability, things like that. And lastly, again, signing up and RSVPing for workshops, career fairs, and employer meet and greets. So if you haven't had much interaction with our office, the main source of our interaction will go through Cougar Pathway. All right, here are some of the events that we do have coming up. So we've already passed a few of our events, or just 2 of them, and the next one will happen starting next week, and it is STEM Careers Week, and we will be having a STEM Career Fair next Thursday, February 20th. So this is a good time to start working on your professionalism, because from this point forward, you will have opportunities to actually connect with recruiters and put your best foot forward. So, let's say you go to a career fair, you connect with the recruiter, you end up applying, getting an interview. That's where this workshop comes in handy for you, right? Because now you're going to be prepared to answer questions that they may have for you. And then we have a host of other events happening throughout this semester, all the way up until April 24th. So several opportunities to engage with employers. I always recommend making sure you do your research on these employers before showing up, obviously, but also making sure that you are taking each of these opportunities to learn how to network and perfect the craft. So before we begin, here are our goals. Remember, you're going to learn or know how to prepare before attending an interview. And another goal is that you're going to learn what type of interview questions may be asked. And of course, make sure if you have questions, please type them into the chat. And you can engage into today's workshop by just commenting, letting us know your thoughts on certain topics as we get to them. So here are some different types of interview formats, right? Because we always think, okay, we're talking to a person and they're asking us questions about ourselves, but in what ways could this occur? And so one of the most common ways are going to be in-person interviews. So that could look like a one-on-one interview with maybe a recruiter or hiring manager. It could be a group or panel. It could also occur outside of the office. It could be a meal interview, so over lunch or dinner, sometimes even coffee, depending on the nature of the occupation. It could also be a technical interview where they ask you to demonstrate certain technical skills. So this is what an in-person interview could consist of. The next one would be a phone interview. Typically, phone interviews are used as a screening interview where they ask you a few questions to get to know your experience level and how compatible you may be for the occupation at hand. Remember, for phone interviews to still dress professionally. And the reason for that is because a lot of times when we dress down, our energy is also down and our confidence is also down. So always try to just, put on clothes, dress nicely for yourself, not super fancy, obviously, or formal, but dress just nice, comfortable, professional. So that way you are in a headspace to answer questions like this, right? You're in that workspace mindset. You can use your notes and resumes because you are just on a phone. Make sure you're in a quiet space because you never know what that person can hear in your background. Try not to eat, drink, or chew any gum. And make sure to slow your speech. So, when we're nervous, we're already probably going to be talking faster. And so, you want to make sure that you are intentionally enunciating everything that you are saying so that they can understand and they're not asking you to have to repeat yourself and vice versa. Be sure not to interrupt the interviewer and then focus and listen to what's being asked so that you can deliver the best response possible. The next interview type is going to be a virtual interview. So it's going to be live, right? Well, two types: live, where you are actually on a call, like we are all on a call today via Zoom, Skype, Teams, Hangouts, whatever system they're using, and they are asking you questions this way. Make sure your username is appropriate and your privacy settings are on. So, for example, if I were to look at the list of people who are all on the call today, I do see first and last names. However, because the university has them flipped, it's last name, comma, first name, which is fine. And then I see some who may have changed their display name to be something else. If you have the ability to change your display name, make sure it's your first and last name. And any designations that may be applicable to the job, like maybe your bachelor's degree, master's degree, or any certifications. So that way they can see that as well. But make sure that you are using something that is applicable and that identifies you. So that way, when they are looking through maybe their records and systems, they're able to match you and verify that they actually met and spoke with you. Another virtual type could be pre-recorded. So they'll share a link and it'll open up and it'll be a series of questions for you to record and respond to. And sometimes you only get one chance to answer the question. So if they give you about 2 minutes to read the question, then they give you about 1 minute to think about your answer. And then the next minute or 2 minutes, you're recording your actual response. A lot of times they don't let you play that back and re-record. You just progress to the next level. And this is why it's important to prepare for your interviews before you go into them, right? Because in the moment of time, you can't prepare. You have to just be ready. So what happens if, or so before I get to there, let me look at some tips. So virtual interviewing tips: when you're speaking, make sure you look at the webcam, right? So right now, if you all are looking at me, I'm looking at the screen right below my webcam, and now I'm looking at my webcam. So if you saw the difference between me looking at the webcam and me looking at the screen, they can see the difference too, okay? So I want you all to actually utilize this experience right now, even though we're just going over tips, to see how you may be perceived virtually, right? Because you can't really change the amount of things that they can see on their end, because if their screen is bigger, that means you're going to appear bigger to them. So just be very mindful of what they can see. Make sure you find a quiet, private, well-lit place that is free from possible interruptions. So if you have any pets, any children, family members, just be sure everyone knows what you have going on so that they're not unintentionally interrupting you. And if you needed to, maybe go to your local library or maybe in our office to conduct a virtual interview, that is okay too. Just check with the appropriate sources. Be sure your audio, your camera, everything's working. Test it beforehand. So don't log in 5 minutes before the interview to start testing. Log in 10 to 15 minutes before that to start testing, because you don't want to run into a situation where you're testing 5 minutes before the interview starts and you can't get connected. And now you're having to contact them before right at the time of the interview. Remember to dress professionally and avoid super bright colors when you're interviewing. You want to control what is seen. You want to make sure that you are being neutral and that there's not any, I guess, graphics or anything that they can like draw assumptions based off of. So you want to remain very, very neutral in terms of your colors, in terms of what you have, designs and patterns, things of that sort. You can have a pen, a notepad, and a copy of your resume on your desk in front of you. In fact, I highly recommend that because you just want to be able to have the same information in front of you that they may also have in front of them. And if they were to ask you a question directly about something on your resume, you want to be able to refer back to it and be able to loop things that are also on your resume to it so that it makes sense for them. Remember to nod, smile to show that you are engaged while they are asking questions or while you are answering. And then you can use hand gestures when appropriate. So I realize that you may see my thumbs a couple of times as I'm talking. And then there are other times where you may not see it, but just because you can't see it does not mean I'm not moving my hands, right? So it's okay. We all typically talk with our hands, but you want to make sure that they're not like over the top grand gestures or covering your face or anything of that sort. And remember to place your phone in silent mode. And now we'll get to the what ifs. So what happens if your video or audio stops working? Make sure before the interviewer you ask for a phone number. And that way, if it happens, you can just reach out to them and you're not feeling stuck or confused or having to send an email waiting and hoping that they see the email in time. If noise interrupts your conversation, like maybe sirens, someone comes to cut the grass, or whatever's happening in your area, you can apologize for that interruption. And if it's a quick thing that may subside within the next couple of seconds, you can just ask for a few moments. And if you need to also mute the microphone because maybe someone else is talking, then you can do that. So that way they're not being distracted by what's happening in your background. I know it may seem like a nerve-wracking thing to do, but remember, we're all human. We all live and we all have areas where things are going to happen, right, in our environment. So the best thing you can do is just apologize for the inconvenience or interruption and, move forward from that point. If someone enters your room unexpectedly, physically, while you're at home, just simply apologize to the interviewer and just let that person know, hey, I'm in an interview. I'll be with you in a second, and keep going. Also, make sure that if they're behind you, that you do turn your camera off. But if you're going to do this, please acknowledge to the interviewer exactly what's happening and what's going on to let them know and not feel that they're in the dark about what's happening in your environment. So the best thing about this slide is communication. So if you need to take a picture of it, I highly recommend doing that. Having this in the back of your mind on a virtual interview can come in handy to ease your nerves. Okay. And I think someone's microphone is not on mute. If that is you, can you please check it? And Priyanka, I'm not sure if you're at your computer, but if so, can you please check to see who's not on mute?
Yes, let me
Thank you. Yeah. All right, so get prepared, right? So we talked about all of the types of interviews that could happen that you may be involved in at some point. And then we talked about what to do if, right? All of the what if hypothetical scenarios. So now we're going to talk about getting prepared. You can't really ace an interview without preparing for it. So one of the first steps is going to be to bring things or have things ready, right? So here's a few things to bring / have ready. And the reason I say bring or have ready is because if you're going somewhere to an interview, then obviously you want to bring them with you. And if you are attending a virtual interview, you just want to have them ready. So the Pathfolio will serve as like your notepad and pen, but also you want to make sure you have your resume and some water just so that you can take a sip as someone may be talking to you to, make sure your mouth's not dry and you're staying hydrated. Prepare and know where to go. So if there's flights, driving, all sorts of things involved, please prepare. There's nothing like feeling very, very jittery and not knowing where you're going, where you're parking, or anything like that before an interview. It could really throw you off your game. And please, if you have the ability to prepare for it, let's do that so that you're not creating any unnecessary stress. And then also for virtual, what to prepare, your quiet location and technology issues, right? So make sure that you are ready to go on all fronts. A part of preparing is also knowing yourself. So, if you are getting ready to talk to someone about a potential job opportunity, you must understand your skills, what makes you unique, your strengths, what you truly care about, and what you're currently working on, and how it contributes to your main goal or this goal at hand. So, reflect on your story. Spend time in reflective introspection about the career choices you have made. Even if, let's say, you're working a retail job, you're working in maybe hospitality, restaurant, things like that, you may think that those jobs are not relevant, but those are the jobs that are giving you the core skills of being a professional and an employee. And so it's really about how you talk about those jobs, right? So when you think about your career choices, it's your job to tie that into how you became what you are today, or the experiences it has given you to leverage today. And so, again, this will give you a good idea of the things that you value in your work and your life. The next thing to do is to research the employer. So, if you are planning to talk to a company or recruiter and you don't know anything about them, typically you probably shouldn't apply, right? Because imagine sitting on a call with a recruiter and asking them questions about what the company does, but you applied for the job. So there is a common level of understanding that you and the recruiter must have, and that would be you understand what the employer is and what, or who they is and what they do. And then they also understand who you are and what you bring to the table. Then it's an opportunity to uncover deeper conversations. So, for example, they are going to ask you to tell them a little bit more about yourself. In an interview, they may also tell you to tell us something that's not on your resume. So remember to study the job description and understand what they're asking. Compare what they're seeking to your qualifications, right? This will let you know how you measure up. And then use different tools like Vault, Career Search, or Glassdoor for an overview of the employer and an industry profile. Remember to look at their website so that you get a gist of exactly what this employer does, the stance that they may take on certain issues, and understand their background and mission statement. This will let you know if you're making the right decision by applying and potentially engaging with this employer. And then also review their products, services, and their client base, right? Because what if their client base is composed of this one type of client base that you don't necessarily value or agree with? Then you want to know that before you actually start to entertain them. Read the recent press releases, whether that be journals or anything of that sort, that may give you some insight on like a project that they may have done. Maybe they received like a monetary award for like sustainability as an example, so that you're understanding exactly what their initiatives look like and where they're spending their time. And then also get perspective. So review trade or business publications and seek perspective and glimpse into their industry standing, right? So if this employer has other competitors, where does this employer stand amongst their competitors? Are they at the bottom? Are they at the top? Are they working their way to the top? Or did something happen that's pushing them to the bottom, right? So you want to understand exactly who you are engaging with. The next step is going to be dressing for success. So if you are, let's say it's your first interview, you don't really have professional clothing. I just want to insert that our office does have a career closet. And so we do offer career clothing rentals. So you can just connect with our office or ask questions at the end of today's session if you needed more information on that. But the standards for dressing professional are here on the screen. So if you need to take a screenshot, I recommend that you do that. And it just includes things such as suits. And we do give like a brief description of what that means or looks like in the color too. Shirts and ties, pants, shoes, and accessories. Ladies, for the shoes, if you are going to be wearing heels or pumps, Make sure they're probably like a 1 to 2 inch, because typically you don't really know where you're going to be walking from your car to the building to the actual room. You also don't know what they have planned for the interview itself. They may want to give you a tour of something or the building or whatever the case is, and you just want to be prepared. And you also don't want to wear heels that are super high, because then that becomes inappropriate for the workplace. Okay. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then again, for accessories, that's your professional bag, whether that's a briefcase, or ladies, a handbag. Try to keep it really small. Or unless it's an actual work bag that you may have like your documents and portfolio in, and then your actual portfolio and resume. So here are some of the things that we oftentimes forget about when we are sitting in front of someone, whether it's virtual or in person, and we are conducting this interview. And this could also happen in a virtual interview that's pre-recorded as well. So your hard or weak handshakes, right? That initial handshake whenever you're meeting them for the first time, that's going to be remembered. Your nervous facial expressions, right? So if your eyebrows are like consistently raised in this confusion state, you want to make sure that you minimize that and you relax your facial muscles, so that way you're not either looking nervous, scared, or surprised by something. Make sure you're not slouching in the chair. In fact, I oftentimes, when I give this presentation in person, I actually mimic and sit to show how you should be sitting, and you should be sitting up. So your back should not be slouched into the chair. You should actually position yourself to sit with your chest forward. And if there is a desk in front of you, I do recommend having just your hands on the desk, so that forces you to sit up and it shows your composure. Okay. Remember not to play with any items. So, ladies, that may mean not wearing any bracelets or rings, because a lot of times in our comfort zone, we start to roll them around. We start to fidget and twiddle, and not in our face, but down below. And they can see that because you're moving and, fidgeting around. Remember to mind your hand gestures, because while they may be asking you a question and let's say the question they asked you triggered you, you may not have showed it on your face, but your hands may have lost like some sort of energy, right? Your hands may have just fell down. So mind all of these different hand gestures, because they do communicate things other than what you hope that they are communicating. If you don't maintain eye contact, that also can be seen as, you may not be telling the truth or whatever the case is. So make sure that you are looking the person directly into their eyes, especially when they're speaking to you, and especially when you are speaking back to them. And remember to communicate by listening and then speaking. So in order for you to respond to something, you have to have listened to something first. And so just remember, it's okay to smile and be excited about the interview, right? Now, obviously, a lot of excitement may come off as nervous. So just make sure that you are balancing that with being attentive, but also excited and intentional. So remember we talked about in the beginning, or I talked about in the beginning, that we're going to discuss what show, don't tell looks like. So we're going to get into that in just a bit. And some of the example questions that you can basically use or remember this phrase is for: tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? What motivated you to apply? What are your short-term and long-term goals? Why do you believe you would be a good fit for this org? And tell me about a time you worked in a team, and so forth. And it's typically any tell me about a time, right? Tell me about yourself, a time, an example, and so forth. So when we talk about situational questions, these often force you to give them a story, right? And so when we say show, don't tell, that means actually walk them through this story, make them actually place themselves in the story to see and feel the things that you are telling them. Now, I'm not saying go into like a 30-minute spiel about your workplace environment and all those things. What I mean is make sure that they understand how you got from point A to point Z, because sometimes those little points in between are the missing factor to helping them understand everything or how well-rounded you may be. So, for example, tell me about a time when you have, and then there's encountered a difficulty or learned a lesson, accomplished a task, or experienced a great result. played a leadership role in a situation, which means you are not a leader, but you played that role. Worked within a team and demonstrated creativity or innovations. So these situations can come from your jobs, your volunteer events, projects or assignments, extracurricular activities, and leadership experiences. So I know a lot of times students come to us and they don't have previous work experience, and we want you to know that not having previous work experience isn't the end all be all, right? We have all experienced certain things in our lives, whether it was a volunteer or a class project, and it's going to be your job to pull from that memory bank so that you can demonstrate to them that you may not have had this on a job, but you have experienced this in a different setting, and this is what you would do to apply it in a job setting. So if you can't make that connection between what you've experienced and how it's transferable, that's where you lose the employer's interest. So being able to demonstrate or communicate your transferable skills are going to be very important. So the STAR method. A lot of you may have heard of the STAR method, and this may be completely new to some of you. So I do recommend taking a screenshot. But the STAR method is typically how we recommend answering most, if not all, interview questions. It's making sure you state the situation, the task, the action, and the result. This gives them a full or well-rounded thought about exactly what you did in that scenario. And it also allows them to assess your ability to think critically, right? Because in order for you to even tell them all four of these things, you would have had to think about this example, and you would have had to understand what this looks like or what this means for you to give it to them. So we're going to look at an example of how or what the STAR method looks like in action. So tell me about a time when you faced a problem in your job or in school and how you solved it. So when you're asked this question, you can choose whether you're going to give a school or a job example. They may only, let's say they didn't give you an option and they said, faced a problem in your job and you don't have any jobs, then you're going to have to use a school example, but you want to make sure that you acknowledge that it is not a job example, but you still want to show how you would approach this on the job, okay? So when we're looking at the STAR method and we are going to state the situation first, you're going to say something similar to this. During my time as a student in the industrial design program at the University of Houston, I was assigned a group project in my product design course where we had to create prototype for a new type of ergonomic office chair. Our team had a diverse mix of ideas, but we faced a major challenge when it came to integrating both comfort and aesthetic appeal into the design. The chair needed to be functional for long hours of use, but also visually appealing to attract potential buyers. So this is the situation, right? This is the problem at hand, or this is the topic of discussion for this example. So what's the task, right? Now that you know the parameters of the challenge, what is the task? As the team lead, so here we already insert what role we took in this example. As the team lead, it was my responsibility to ensure we stayed on schedule, addressed the conflicting design priorities, and came up with a solution that balanced both form and function. I realized we needed to find common ground that would allow us to deliver a product that met all requirements without compromising one aspect for another. Perfect. Now we're going to look at the next two pieces, which are going to be action and result. So after we learned about the challenge and we learned about the task at hand, now we're going to talk about the action we took, because oftentimes we confuse the task with the action, but the task is describing what needs to happen and the action is actually telling them what took place. Okay. I organized a team meeting where we revisited our research on ergonomics and user preference. I encouraged each team member to share their design ideas and the rationale behind them. After a thorough discussion, we agreed on a modular design that allowed the chair to have interchangeable components. This would give the user the option to adjust the chair backrest and armrest to their comfort, while still keeping a sleek and minimalist appearance. I took the initiative to redesign the prototype in SolidWorks and presented the new concept to the team, incorporating everyone's input. Before I move to the result, I want to acknowledge that in this action, we gave a step-by-step of what we did. And then we also inserted a skill set. So this is a great time to insert your applicable skill sets as it relates to the job that you're applying or interviewing for, because it allows them to see how you utilize the skills that they are looking for. So in this example, the skill set here is SolidWorks, which is located on the last line of the paragraph for action. And so not only that this person is saying exactly what they've done to get this thing handled, they also told you what they used to get it handled, and it's SolidWorks. And so lastly, results. The final design was well received by both our professor and classmates for its innovation and functionality. The modularity allowed for flexibility, and the aesthetic appeal was retained. Not only did we complete the project ahead of schedule, but our chair prototype was also selected to be displayed at the university's design showcase. This experience taught me the importance of clear communication, collaboration, and finding creative solutions to meet multiple objectives in a design process. So when we talk about results, the results not only just said, okay, everything was great, all was well, right? It actually told you the end result of this project by saying the final design and so forth. It also went into detail to show the accolades that this design got or received. And so now you're seeing that, okay, not only did things go well, but they went so well that they were able to do this next thing, which is be displayed at the university's design showcase. And then they summed it up by telling us what they learned from the experience. Now, going back to the previous or to the question was, tell me about a time when you faced a problem and how you solved it. Nowhere did they ask explicitly for what did you learn and what would you do like they didn't say it however you gave it to them. And so that is what makes a great response to an interview question, is when you are answering the questions that you have not been asked. And that is, what did you learn from this experience? And if it were a problem and maybe you couldn't solve it, what would you have done differently to approach that to solve it correctly the next time? So remember, there is a tactic to this, and it's making sure that you are being your best self, but also demonstrating how well-rounded your skills are. So some common interview questions and tips for answering them include the infamous one, tell me about yourself, right? When we hear this question, a lot of people tense up and we get nervous because we don't like to talk about ourselves. And I will tell you that it gets easier the more confident you get, right? So if your confidence does not change, then the level of easiness won't change either. So you have to be confident in the skills that you bring to the table. As a student, whether you're undergrad or graduate, as a student, you're going to probably struggle to find that confidence, and that is normal. But the key to it is practicing consistently. And at the Career Center, we do offer opportunities for you to do mock interviews with us. So you can schedule mock interviews with anyone in our office, and we can help practice these different questions and give you pointers and feedback on how you performed with that mock interview. So if that's something you struggle with, we'll definitely have the details at the end of the session for that. So when you're asked to tell me about yourself, here are some of the things that you should leave out: your age, your nationality, marital statuses, personal interests or hobbies, unless specifically asked, but otherwise they should be left out. Information about other people, negative statements about people or experiences. So that means past jobs, past supervisors or colleagues, and anything that is not relevant to the job. A lot of these things are recommended to be left out because they do also cross discrimination barriers, right? So that's things like nationality, marital status, age, things like that could start to create more of a discrimination or bias, and they shouldn't. So we always say to leave those out. Employers should not be asking you about your age, your nationality in an interview anyway. So if they do, that should say a lot about them more than anything else. So I would run far away, and that's just my opinion. But if you need advice on how an interview went, you can always talk to our office to just, let us know, and we can do some thinking through in terms of the questions you may have been asked in your interview. Now, if they start to become a little more legal related, then obviously we would have to refer you out, or you won't be able to really discuss those things with us. But in terms of just understanding the questions that you were asked and what they may have been trying to assess, we can probably strategize with you. Now, when you hear tell me about yourself, make sure you keep it brief, natural, and tailored to the specifics of the company and role. So that means if you are about to tell them maybe just about your history of employment and where you've worked, and let's say you've worked as like a camp counselor, maybe as your very first job, but now you're currently working as a shift lead at either a restaurant or a retail store, you want to make sure that you only list or tell them things that are specific to the role, because telling them that you were a camp counselor back in like 2020, when in terms of it applying to the job, it doesn't really matter. You could just leave that out, right? It may be listed on your resume as your employment history, and that's okay. But when you're telling them about yourself, they really want to know about you, the person, in terms of how you got to applying to this job, right? So maybe your education is applicable, maybe a few courses you've taken or projects that you've completed are applicable, and maybe your current or most recent employer is applicable to what you want to do with the job. So make sure that you are sticking within the guidelines, and then you're telling them your interest and passion for this job. Um, if you have already done your research, then you wouldn't have a problem with connecting your own values to their values or their mission. Okay. So remember that the research of the employer is super important, because this is your opportunity to show them just how much you know about them and how good of a fit you may be. So, talk a bit about the scope of your current role and any accomplishments. Share your background and how you got there, right? So, why did you even choose your major, especially if your major is related to this job? I'm hoping that's the case. And then also explain the relevancy. Remember to segue into why you want the position and how you would be a good fit, because typically that's always the next question, or the last question in an interview is, why do you want this position, or why do you think we should hire you, right? And so if you can sum up everything you said about yourself and transition it into, and this is why I believe I'm a good fit for the role, blah, 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 blah. So from there, they will be able to see that you are a forward thinker, right? You're not just answering the question just to get it over with. You're telling them exactly what it is they need to know.
Ariana, we have a question in the chat, or
Yes.
somebody has raised their hand.
Okay, perfect.
Hi. So yeah, I just had a question. For like the tell me about yourself question.
hmm
Um, would that be a good time to like give our elevator pitch?
Yes, in a way, that's a really good question. And a lot of times, students think that the elevator pitch and tell me about yourself are completely different, and they're really not. So, drafting your elevator pitch could actually help you answer this question. The only difference is that you won't sit and recite it the way you would in elevator pitch, because using elevator pitches, you are either, let's say in passing with someone, maybe at a career fair where, there's a lot of things happening and there's not a lot of time. But in an interview, this is a set aside time for you and the employer to actually have a conversation. So you won't recite it that way, but you definitely would want to make sure you use the same framework. So hitting all of the points, such as your education, background, experience, any current projects, and any of your interests. All of those things still go into the tell me about yourself question. So yes, it'll be very, very similar. So if you have an elevator pitch, just take that and then kind of break it down and apply it back to the actual role that you're interviewing for.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. I see another hand from Teresa.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, my question is for the preparation for the interviews, what happens if it's like online? Do we still follow the same concept of what you talked about if we were to be in person but instead online?
Yes, are you saying the preparation for it, as in like
Yes.
what you should bring, what you should have
Mhm.
ready? Yes.
Mhm.
So let me navigate back to that slide. Here we're coming into it. So preparing, you should have these things ready. So it does say what to bring slash have ready. So if this is virtual, you want to still have all of these things ready. Obviously, if it's virtual, then you won't necessarily coordinate flights or anything before that, but you also should have the link. So when we talk about where to go, what link are you using? What systems are you going to be tapping into on your computer? So your camera, your audio, or whatever the case is. And if you have a presentation, you need to make sure your presentation is working properly. So the topics of this still applies to a virtual interview. It's just the sub bullets are going to change. But then for your virtual interview, you want to make sure your location and your technology is working and up to speed. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. You're welcome. And Priyanka, let me look at the chat. You said there was one in the chat too?
No, sorry. It was
Oh, no,
somebody
okay.
had raised their hand. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? No? Okay. Where were we? All right, here we go. So here are a few other questions that are commonly asked, and they include, tell me about a time you solved a problem, which we already walked through, and what is your greatest accomplishment? So when we look at this, you're going to want to make sure you use the STAR method. Keep it positive, right? So when we talk about the problems in our past experiences, try not to talk about something that's super touchy, right? Something that may have like upsetted you so bad that when you talk about it, it may still show how upset you were, because you want to make sure you're talking about positive things, right? And when we say problem seems negative, right? But a problem could just be something as simple as something went wrong at work, right? And you fixed it. So keep it positive, always end on a positive note. So no matter how bad things got in that situation, always turn it back to positives before you're done talking. So that way there's no weird feelings about something you may have said or an example that you have given. And again, end with the solution, right? So we always want to leave on that note. The greatest accomplishment, again, using the STAR method, but dig deep, right? This is a greatest accomplishment. So when you look at all of the things that you have done that has made you proud, that's where you have a list of them and you start to determine which one is the greatest, right? That means you could think, okay, this one took the most amount of time and effort. That could be maybe you feel that this one was a long time coming, or maybe this one just made you feel awesome, right? So when you talk about it, make sure you tell them exactly why it's a great accomplishment, okay? Another question is, what is your greatest strength and what is an area of growth? A lot of us struggle to answer this question because we do feel that we are good at some things, but then we struggle to tell them what our area of growth is because we don't want it to be seen as exactly what it is, a weakness, right? But I want to tell you that no one's perfect. And so even the person that's interviewing you or the group of people interviewing you, they're not perfect. Everyone has an area of growth. There is some aspect of their professional life that they are not strong in. And the best or the first step to becoming better is acknowledging that, right? So I challenge you today, from this point forward, is to think of a few areas of growth that you have so that you're not blindsided by this question, okay? So when you think of your strengths and your areas of growth, your strengths, you're going to want to, or for both, you're going to want to stay positive, describe how you're working on any weaknesses or areas of growth, and provide examples. So it's one thing to just say, oh, I'm organized and my area of growth is I don't know, using technology. You don't want to just say it. You want to actually demonstrate it and then also describe how you're working on it. So if you're organized, give an example of how you're organized, because organized can mean physical organization, meaning you keep a clean, tidy desk, or organized could mean that you're great technically organizing. So maybe on the computer, systems, files, things like that. So for strengths, identify any technical or interpersonal skills that would help you on that job. Provide a detailed example that would paint a picture of how you would do it at their company. And then an area of growth, identify a skill that you know you can strengthen and share how you are actively working on improving this skill. So again, if you say that you're not tech savvy, that's an area of growth for you. How are you working on this? Do you use a computer every day for an hour a day just to build that competency? Do you do projects? Like, how are you actively working on becoming more tech savvy, right? When we talk about crafting our skills, you can't really craft skills if you're not practicing them. So make sure that you demonstrate exactly how you're working on it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So this is a question that we forget about, and this is basically long-term goals or long-term planning. And so here are a few details you should know about this question. So give them an idea of where you're headed. They are also asking this because they want to know that you're interested in the field and not going to leave right away, right? And then be realistic and humble, right? Don't give something that's not super realistic in terms of where you currently are. So make sure that when you're talking to them that it is realistic and they can actually see how you can get from where you are to this next level, and also how they're able to help you with that. And they're also assessing your longevity. So this goes back to bullet point 2, when they want to know that you're interested in the field and not going to leave right away. They want to make sure that they're going to have someone for a long time, right? Not someone who's just going to come in for 6 months to a year and then give up and go somewhere else. They want to make sure that you're going to work into this role, grow in it, and then hopefully reach those goals in 3 to 5 years that you're telling them. So now that we've talked about how to prepare and how to answer a lot of the questions that are super common, here are some things you should remember whenever they ask you, do you have any questions for us? It is never a good idea to show up to an interview without any questions to ask the employer. Now, if you've already had a job before, or if you've already interviewed prior to this presentation and you have not asked a question, that is okay. Once you know better, do better. So now you know that you should always ask questions. The reason you should always ask questions is because this demonstrates your interest in the company or the role itself. And it also doesn't stay at the surface level, right? It's not a one-sided thing. They don't just get to grill you about your experience and your capabilities, but you also have the opportunity to ask them questions to understand things that you may not know about the role. Because sometimes if you ask the right questions, you may hear things that may turn you off, and you may say, this, I don't think I want to continue with this, and you'll be done from there. So here are a list of questions. If you need to take a picture, go ahead and do that. But these questions are just different questions you can ask them to help you gain more knowledge about this opportunity. So I won't read all of them, but I'll read a few good ones. So for example, how would you describe the company culture? Number 5, that's a good way to understand the atmosphere there, right? How the individuals in the interview feel about their culture. If they allow each other to answer, that's perfect. One of the things I would be weary of is if you're asking questions and the same people keep answering, or only the leadership is answering, then that may be something to keep in the back of your mind, because that means either they don't allow the employees to speak, or the employees may not feel inclined to speak, and that also can show you culture. So their responses aren't the only things you're assessing, but it's the things that are happening around the responses, right? Another good one is number 8. What are the biggest challenges that someone in this position would face? That's a good question to ask, because this will allow you to either feel super confident about what you can do for them, or it may clarify that you are not a good fit, right? So if, let's say, we're using the example of someone whose weakness is being tech savvy, and they say the biggest challenge that someone may face in this position would be managing multiple software systems, that may not be a good thing, because if you're not tech savvy and the biggest problem they believe you'll face is managing multiple software systems, then you're going to have probably extremely hard time in this role, especially within the first 30 to 90 days, because you're going to have to literally plunge your tech savviness, right? But let's say this were the other way around, and one of your strengths is that you're tech savvy, like overly tech savvy. And they say, well, one of the biggest challenges is that is managing systems. Then now your confidence just shot through the roof, because managing systems and technology isn't a thing for you, right? Like, you can do it in your sleep. So asking those questions could help you understand exactly what you're getting involved in. And another good one would also be anything that helps fuel you as a person. So, for example, number 10 is about sustainability and innovation, right? So, if you are a creative individual and you love to optimize processes or come up with new ideas, and that keeps you feeling involved at work, then that may be a question that you want to ask. Or maybe you want to know what initiatives the company is involved in that isn't directly related to your role or department, but maybe a company as a whole, some sustainability initiatives outside of in the world, then that could also be a question that you ask to just to understand where they are in society. So after you meet with them, it is always a good idea to send a follow-up email. And here's a quick script. So you can say something along the lines of, I hope you're having a great week. My name is such and such, and I had the pleasure of interviewing with you. You could put and your team or and the other person's name if you have just two people. Add the date and add the position title, because the worst thing that could happen is they don't know who you are or when you interviewed, who you interviewed with, and for what role if they're recruiting for multiple roles. So you just want to give them all of the information. You can let them know or express your excitement about the opportunity. And then also you can just add in specific things like the area that's related to the job, or any relevant tasks that may have come up during that conversation. Then you can summarize it into, you mentioned that the team will be finalizing a decision this week, and I wanted to follow up to see if there have been any updates. If there's any additional information I can provide to assist in the decision making, please feel free to let me know. Very short, very simple, straight to the point. It doesn't have to be something elaborate. It doesn't have to be a cover letter. You don't have to reattach your resume. Just follow up, letting them know that they're still on your mind. And so that way, if they are in that process of making their decision, they will have that in the back of their head. Because imagine if they interviewed 10 people and only you followed up with them and you were a great candidate, then it may actually just get you the job opportunity. So keep that in mind. All right, and so here are some of the resources that some of our information from today's presentation came from. So that's the Muse Balance Career Indeed.com. And any questions? All right, I see one question. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you for the great presentation.
You're
It's really
welcome.
helpful. I had
Awesome.
a question with regards to the salary. Like, if we want to negotiate per se the salary, at what point can we do this? Like, would it be whenever it's the end of the interview, like
Mhm,
when we are asking actually questions about like the
mhm.
company culture and all of that, or
Are
how
you
does it?
asking about identifying the salary or negotiating the salary?
Negotiating, or like
So,
yeah, or also maybe identifying too, because I've been having some interviews where they don't tell me, and even the description doesn't say what's the salary. So
mhm.
I'm always having trouble to like what's the point to ask them actually for the salary. So I don't know if I'm asking correctly.
No, that's a good question. So
Yeah.
no, you're asking for both ways, which is fine. So identifying the salary. So if you're in a situation where the salary is not disclosed on the job description, or they don't also tell you, at any point during the interview, one, I'm going to always recommend that you have done your preliminary research. So you can use websites like Glassdoor, or other sites to find the average salary for that role in a specific area or region. So it could be in the US or it could be in your actual state. So that way you know what the average would be, right? So that you would understand like the ballpark in which they may actually offer. So that way you're not going in completely blind, but you have an idea. So if they do not mention the salary, I'm going to also say that it's going to be up to your discretion if you ask. And then, of course, if you're going to ask, it should be at the end of the interview. It should probably be one of the last questions you ask, because you don't want to turn them off thinking that you're only there about the money, right? And so you want to make sure that you have gotten all of the other important questions out of the way. But just know that if they did not mention the salary, they may be turned off if you mention the salary. So I just want you to be aware of that. It is okay to continue throughout a process and not know the salary as long as you are interested in the job. right? So if you're interested in the job itself and the functions, then it's okay to continue throughout, because at some point they're going to have to tell you the salary, right? I will say most times now in 2025, most jobs are telling you the salary, especially on the initial phone screening. It may not be on the job posting, but they will probably mention it on the phone screening to make sure that they're not wasting your time and you're not, wasting theirs. But if that's not your case and they have not mentioned it, you can ask. Just make sure you ask in a respectful and professional way. And just also know that it could still turn them off regardless of how you meant it or not. Okay. Does that answer the first part of your question?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay. And then in terms of negotiation, so negotiation can only occur after they make an offer. So let's say you did ask in the interview, or they told you in the interview the salary. That's not the time to discuss the salary because they have not offered you the job, right? So you don't want to get ahead of yourself. So the only time that you would be entering into salary negotiation is whenever they have actually extended an employment offer to you. And then we can talk about it too. If you're in that situation, I would suggest making an appointment with one of the career counselors so we can actually look at your unique situation. But I always recommend researching again the salary for the area, understanding how you measure up against the qualifications, and then drafting your salary script or response, or your negotiation response back to them. And again, it's a to the point thing, but you want to make sure that you have data backed by why you're negotiating that salary. But that only happens after they offer it.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome. So I will say this for everyone who's still remaining. Your challenge for the remainder of the semester is going to be to schedule a mock interview with our office to practice your interviewing skills. So if you have never had an interview before, or if you've had one but you didn't do really well, or you could use some work, I'm going to recommend that you do this. Mock interviews are a really great way for you to honestly be yourself, because one, you're doing it with a career counselor, so you're not actively interviewing for a job, so it's okay to make mistakes, and we can walk through how your answers can be better crafted, right? And a great thing too is that if you have a potential job that you are interested in or will be interviewing for, that's even better, because we can give you a mock interview for that occupation, right? So if you just let us know ahead of time, we can develop questions that are tailored to that occupation. So that's your challenge for the semester. And if you are still here and you had not had a chance to sign in to this workshop at the very beginning, please make sure you do that. It does help our office out a lot in terms of just understanding how many students are engaging with us. So please, please, please sign in. Use the code COOG, all lowercase, whenever you are prompted to. And if you are not using a computer, you will need to use the return key on your phone's keyboard. The link to this QR is also in the chat as well, just in case you may be on a computer and don't, or on your phone and can't necessarily scan it. So you'll be able to do that. Also in the chat, Priyanka did drop the meet with the counselor link. So if you are ready to schedule your appointment, go ahead and click that link, meet with a counselor, and it will give you the instructions on how to make your appointment with our office through Cougar Pathway. Our availability is posted every Thursday for the following week. So if you were to log in today and don't see anything for this week, just log in again tomorrow around 5 p.m. and you should see availability for next week. Our slots do fill up pretty fast, so just make sure you're on it each Thursday. And if you are looking at it anywhere between Thursday and Friday, you should find something for next week. But if you consistently get on there and there's not something available at the time that you really need or want, just reach out to our office and we will try to work with you. We also offer drop-ins too. So the drop-in information is located on that same link if you have any questions. And Priyanka, do we have the survey link for feedback?
I can put the link in the chat. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, and also for those who are able to scan, I have the QR dancing right here on the screen. So if you please don't mind taking our survey, letting us know your thoughts about this session. If you found the information helpful, what are your next steps? This will help us assess how much information you all are enjoying or finding valuable, so that way we know what to keep providing to other students as well. So a lot of the things that we do are not just for no reason. They're just to make sure that we are providing the exceptional stuff to you all and also to the students that come behind you. And I'll stick around if there's anyone else left for questions, but that is all I have for you all today. Thank you so much for attending, sticking to the end, watching everything. And if you have questions or want to go ahead and schedule your mock interview, you are free to do that, or contact our office if you have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't think anyone has questions. Okay, Priyanka, I just removed, I think, a last few from the meeting.
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to find the appointment survey, the workshop survey link.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll send it as a follow-up email.
Okay, or you can put it in the chat here too.
Okay, let me get it.
I can't find the workshop survey, or maybe I'm just looking in a hurry, so.
Normally what I do, just to not have to go search, I'll scan it on my phone and then Teams it to myself.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
thought about that. I was like, oh, but there is a
Copy.
big protest going on here for the campus safety issue.
Really?
Yeah, it's a huge, like a whole big line, and now they're outside the president's building.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Where is the work? Is it? It's in the UCS one, right?
The
I just
culture?
see all these graduation surveys all over the place, all projects. And then I even tried searching, but just when I type WOR, it just.
Okay, I just put it in there.
Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. I didn't think I was gonna cover all of that in time, but I was like, I'm just gonna trust the process.
At like 12:25, I was like, oh my God, she's still on the virtual interviews and the
Yeah.
etiquettes. I was like, we still have like all these things to cover,
went
like
good
in my
though.
head. But you did it.
Yeah, I did. So I looked at each one and I knew which ones that I could spend time on and ones I was just gonna like glaze through. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna trust the process and stick to it and just keep
Oh,
going.
wait,
But
can you stop the recording?
I did. Oh, I thought I did. Oh, I hit stop, but I don't think it stopped.